Imagine walking into a crime scene, right? You've got detectives carefully bagging evidence.
Measuring distances, dusting for prints, all that.
Exactly. They are following the clues wherever they lead to figure out what happened.
Right, because you build the case from the ground up, based strictly on the physical evidence you find, no matter how confusing it might be at first.
Right. But now, imagine a different detective walking into that exact same room.
Okay.
They step right over the muddy footprints. They completely ignore the fingerprints on the wall. Instead, they just point at this random, completely clean lamp in the corner and declare, "I knew it. The
Right.
butler did it with the lamp."
Wow. Okay, yeah.
And from that moment on, they only collect evidence that makes the lamp look guilty. And they just throw everything else in the trash.
That is a brilliant visual for confirmation bias. I mean, you're completely working backward at that point.
It's working backward, and it is exactly what pseudo-archaeologists do every single day.
Literally every day.
So welcome to today's deep dive into the wild, weird, and sometimes, frankly, dangerous world of fringe history.
It's a huge topic.
It really is. We've been digging through a mountain of research on this, specifically a really comprehensive Wikipedia article as our foundation. And our mission today for you is to unpack what this phenomenon actually is, why so many people are drawn to it, and how actual, rigorous scientists are fighting back against just a massive tide of misinformation.
Because there's so much of it out there.
Oh, everywhere. I promise you, by the end of this conversation, you are going to know exactly how to spot fake history. And we're going to explore why human beings just absolutely love a good conspiracy theory.
It's a topic that sounds like it's just, harmless late-night television about ancient aliens.
Yeah, the guy with the crazy hair.
Exactly. But as we look closely at the history, the roots and the real-world consequences of pseudoarchaeology run incredibly deep.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we get into the really wild claims, we have to define what we are actually looking at.
Good idea.
This field goes by a lot of names. People call it alternative archaeology, fringe archaeology, fantastic archaeology. But my personal favorite comes from the late editor of the journal Antiquity, a guy named Glenn Daniel, who memorably referred to it as bullshit archaeology.
A highly technical, very academic term, obviously.
Oh, clearly.
But, he wasn't just being inflammatory. The core characteristic that all these fringe theories share, whether they are talking about lost continents like Atlantis, ancient astronauts, or trying to prove biblical literalism, is a complete and total absence of the scientific method.
Right.
Professional archaeology is recursive. You test hypotheses against data. And if the physical data proves you wrong, well, you have to change your hypothesis.
You follow the fingerprints, not the lamp.
Precisely. Pseudoarchaeologists do the exact opposite. They start with a favored conclusion, which is almost always based on intuition, religious dogma, or nationalism.
Which we'll definitely get into later.
Oh, absolutely. And then they either cherry pick or outright falsify the data to fit that conclusion. Take stratigraphy, for example.
Okay.
In real archaeology, the layers of Earth are everything. It's like a laundry basket.
Our laundry basket?
Yeah, think about it. The clothes at the very bottom were put there first, right? So they're the oldest.
Okay, tracking.
The clothes on top are the newest. You have to pull them out carefully, layer by layer, to understand the timeline. A pseudo-archaeologist will just reach all the way to the bottom, yank out a sock, hold it up next to a shirt from the top, and claim they were worn on the exact same day.
That is wild. Practicing pseudo-archaeology is like doing a crossword puzzle by writing in whatever letters you want, ignoring the clues completely, and then bragging to all your friends that you solved it.
What's fascinating here is how they managed to make those random letters seem like they actually fit to an untrained eye.
How do they do that?
A classic technique is stripping artifacts completely out of their original cultural context. They rely heavily on these very generalized visual comparisons.
Like what?
So a fringe theorist will look at a step pyramid in Egypt and a step pyramid in Mexico. They will completely strip away all the local history, the radiocarbon dating, the cultural nuances.
Just ignore all the actual science.
Exactly. And simply say to the audience, look, they both have a vaguely similar shape, therefore, they must have been built by the exact same lost civilization.
They completely erase the context. I mean, building a big pile of rocks with a wide base so it doesn't fall over isn't evidence of Atlantis. It's just gravity.
Exactly. But when real archaeologists point out that these two monuments were built thousands of years apart, by completely different societies for completely different reasons, the fringe theorists don't just say, oh, my mistake.
Right, they go on the offensive. And this brings us to how they actually convince so many millions of people to believe them. They play the ultimate underdog card.
They really do.
They claim that mainstream academia is this massive, sinister church of science conspiracy. It's like a player who is losing a game of chess, so they just flip the board over and loudly accuse their opponent of cheating.
That's exactly it.
You see this all over your social media feeds today, right? The guy shouting that the world is flat gets 1 million views by claiming he's fighting the system, while the physicist patiently explaining gravity gets completely ignored.
It's a very effective playbook, unfortunately. People like Robert Bauval, a prominent pseudoarchaeologist, they portray academics as this global powerhouse acting as ruthless gatekeepers of the truth.
Like they're hiding something.
Exactly, ready to crush anyone they perceive as a heretic. They dismiss actual experts as being unadventurous, just sitting in dusty libraries, terrified to challenge orthodoxies because they might lose their comfortable university tenure.
But the contradiction here is just mind-blowing to me. They claim to hate the establishment, they call scientists a corrupt cabal, but at the exact same time, they are absolutely desperate for academic validation.
Oh, they crave it.
Look at Graham Hancock, one of the most famous fringe authors out there. In his book, Fingerprints of the Gods, he tries to legitimize the pole shift hypothesis.
Right, that one.
Which is this wildly fringe idea of a sudden catastrophic shift in the Earth's crust. And he does it by repeatedly pointing out that Albert Einstein once commented positively on it. Wait, hold on. So they hate experts, but they use Einstein to prove their point.
That's a bit hypocritical.
But Einstein was a theoretical physicist, not a geologist. And plate tectonics, the actual science of how the Earth's crust moves, wasn't even widely accepted by science until after Einstein died. That feels like a massive blind spot.
It is a massive blind spot, and it perfectly illustrates how they use the illusion of authority rather than actual mechanical evidence. Now, to be fair to the critics, professional archaeologists like Colin Renfrew do openly acknowledge that academia is often resistant to radical new ideas.
Academia can be slow.
But that's not because of some shadowy conspiracy to hide the truth.
It's because the scientific method demands rigorous proof.
Exactly. Overturning entrenched, well-documented positions requires extraordinarily compelling data. If you're going to claim gravity doesn't work, you better have a mountain of peer-reviewed math. And as historians like Garrett Fagan point out, pseudoarchaeologists simply do not have that data. They have rhetoric.
So if they just don't have the goods, why not just ignore them? It's very easy to look at guys on TV pointing to the stars and talking about Atlantis as just harmless, entertaining fun. Let them write their sci-fi books, right?
You'd think so.
But the research takes a very serious turn here because when you look at who actually benefits from these theories, it gets incredibly dark, incredibly fast. This isn't just about ratings or book sales. Pseudoarchaeology has routinely been used to support racialized nationalism, white supremacy, and violent colonialism.
That is a critical point that usually gets totally lost in the entertainment value. When you start with an a priori conclusion, meaning a conclusion you've decided is absolutely true before you've even looked at a single piece of evidence.
Got it.
That conclusion is almost always heavily influenced by the prejudices of the era you live in. Look at what happened in the 1930s. Nazi Germany actually created an entire organization called the Ahnenerbe.
I hadn't heard of this.
Yeah, this was literally a state-funded pseudo-archaeology department. They sent heavily funded expeditions to places like the ancient ruins of Tiwanaku in Bolivia, led by men like Edmund Kiss.
And I'm guessing they weren't there to just learn about Bolivian history.
Not at all. They were there explicitly to find evidence of an ancient Aryan master race to justify their ideology of global conquest.
Wow.
They would measure ancient skulls, ignore all local indigenous context, and try to construct a fake historical narrative that Germanic ancestors had built these incredible structures.
That is, wow. And it's not just an overseas phenomenon either. In North America, you had the incredibly damaging mound builder myth.
Yes, a huge example.
European colonizers pushed westward and found these massive, breathtakingly complex earthworks and mounds across the continent, like the ones at Cahokia. These were sprawling cities.
Massive urban centers.
But instead of attributing them to the Native American ancestors who actually built them, the colonizers refused to believe indigenous people were capable of such engineering. So they created this elaborate myth of a lost, non-native race, maybe from Europe, maybe from the Middle East, who supposedly built the mounds and were then tragically wiped out by the Native Americans.
Right, because it provided a very convenient moral justification for driving Native Americans off their land. You also see this with the Kensington Runestone in Minnesota.
What's that one?
It's a slab of rock covered in runes, quote-unquote discovered in the late 19th century, which was used for decades to allege that Nordic Vikings were actually the primary and original explorers of the American Midwest, totally bypassing indigenous history.
So what does this all mean? It means that stealing a culture's history is the ultimate form of colonialism. You're not just taking their land in the present, you're taking their legacy in the past.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, these aren't just harmless mistakes made by overenthusiastic amateurs.
Yeah.
As scholars like John Hoops argue, these myths are actively weaponized in the service of dispossession and oppression.
Yeah.
Fake fieldwork is conducted explicitly to steal indigenous achievements. By claiming that magnificent ancient monuments were actually built by lost white tribes or Atlanteans or even extraterrestrials, these theorists are actively erasing the ingenuity, the history, and the very humanity of indigenous peoples.
It's historical theft, pure and simple. And the two biggest targets of this kind of theft, without a doubt, are ancient Egypt and the Maya civilization. Let's look at their greatest hits, starting with Egypt. The Great Pyramid of Giza is an absolute magnet for this stuff.
It really is. The theories range from Charles Piazzi Smith in the 1800s claiming the pyramid was so mathematically perfect that it could only have been built by God himself, to modern claims by authors like Scott Creighton that it was a massive recovery vault built by Atlanteans to survive a global flood. And of course, the ever-popular ancient alien theory. Graham Hancock even argues the pyramids are a legacy of an advanced global civilization destroyed by a comet. Alongside this, you have Robert Schacht's Sphinx water erosion hypothesis.
Oh, I've seen specials on that.
Right, which claims the Great Sphinx is thousands of years older than accepted based on supposed rain weathering patterns, totally ignoring the surrounding geological context.
And real Egyptologists like Zahi Hawass and Mark Lehner heavily contest all of this because it ignores the massive amount of societal evidence we actually have from the Old Kingdom. We actually can track the evolution of Egyptian pyramid building.
Exactly. It's a very clear lineage.
They didn't just pop up out of nowhere as perfect alien structures. It was a clear human process of trial and error. First, the Egyptians built mastabas. These are just flat-roofed, rectangular brick tombs.
Right.
Then, a brilliant architect named Imhotep decided to stack those mastabas on top of each other, creating the step pyramid of Djoser.
Right. They were experimenting. They were figuring it out.
Exactly. Then you have the Maiden Pyramid, which actually collapsed during construction because the angle was too steep.
A literal engineering failure.
Yes. Then they built the Bent Pyramid, which literally changes its angle halfway up because the ancient engineers realized it was starting to crack and they panicked. You can literally see their math mistake frozen in stone.
I love that example.
Right. After fixing their math, they built the Red Pyramid, and finally they perfected the math for the Great Pyramid. It wasn't aliens. It was human beings practicing engineering over centuries.
That is the ultimate scientific counter to these alternative claims, the mundane physical reality we keep finding. Take the Diary of Mirror, for instance.
The Diary of who?
Mirror, M-E-R-E-R. This isn't a theory. It's an actual physical papyrus document discovered near the Red Sea. It was written by a middle-ranking official named Mirror, who was directly involved in the construction of the Great Pyramid.
Wait, we have a diary from the actual construction?
We do. The diary literally acts as a logbook, detailing the daily transportation of limestone blocks by boat along the Nile to the construction site by human workers.
Wow.
It's a logistics ledger. It leaves absolutely zero room for Atlantean levitation devices.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The fringe theories aren't just about the buildings, they're about the people, too. We have to talk about the curse of the pharaohs.
Oh, the classic mummy's curse.
Right. When archaeologist Howard Carter discovered King Tut's intact tomb in 1922, the financial backer of the expedition, Lord Carnarvon, died a few months later.
Which sparked a frenzy.
The global press went wild. They claimed it was a supernatural mummy's curse that killed him, and rumors spread that the lights in Cairo mysteriously flickered out the exact moment he died. But if you actually look at the medical records, Lord Carnarvon didn't die from a magical hex.
No, he didn't.
He accidentally sliced open a mosquito bite while shaving. The cut got infected, which led to severe blood poisoning, sepsis, and then pneumonia. It was a tragic pre-antibiotic medical reality, cynically turned into a supernatural legend just to sell newspapers.
And that insatiable desire for a sensational story over a complex truth also heavily drives the pseudoarchaeology surrounding the Maya civilization. Historians often refer to this as Mayanism, a collection of New Age beliefs that completely romanticize and mystify the ancient Maya.
Right.
The absolute most famous example of this was the 10,012 apocalypse phenomenon.
Oh, I remember this. Everyone thought the world was ending.
Right. It was entirely based on a profound misunderstanding of the Maya long count calendar. This specific calendar tracks long cycles of time, and one of those major cycles, spanning roughly 5,126 solar years, happened to end on December 21st, 2012. Fringe theorists found a single set of hieroglyphs from a site called Tortuguero that mentioned a deity arriving at the end of this cycle, and they immediately assumed it meant a global cataclysm.
But the mechanism of that calendar isn't a ticking time bomb. It's literally like the odometer on your car. When your car hits 99,999 miles, it rolls over to zero.
Exactly.
The car doesn't explode, you just start a new mile. The Maya were just starting a new cycle of time.
Exactly. The Maya themselves viewed it as a time of renewal, not an apocalypse. But the sensationalism didn't stop in 2012. There's an author named Maurice Cotterell who looked at the incredibly intricate carved sarcophagus lid of the famous Maya ruler Kinnick Jena Pakal.
Okay.
Instead of analyzing what the symbols actually meant to the Maya people, Cotterell claimed the carving showed Pakal operating the controls of a mechanical spaceship, complete with exhaust flames, proving the Maya had extraterrestrial intelligence.
But what is it actually showing?
If you understand Maya iconography, it's a deeply spiritual, earthly depiction. Pakal is shown at the moment of his death, falling down the trunk of the world tree, which is a central concept in Maya cosmology, descending into the underworld, Xibalba. What fringe theorists call spaceship exhaust are actually the stylized roots of the world tree in the gaping jaws of the underworld centipede.
Wow.
They are stripping away a beautiful cultural theology to insert a cheap sci-fi narrative.
Now, I want to push back on one claim here on behalf of anyone listening who might be on the fence, because this next one sounds really convincing. What about the claim of pre-Columbian contact between Egypt and the Americas?
The cocaine mummies.
Yes. The theory goes that traces of nicotine and cocaine were found in the tissue of Egyptian mummies. Now, tobacco and coca are South American plants. If they found cocaine in an Egyptian mummy, isn't that a smoking gun that ancient Egyptians were sailing across the Atlantic Ocean thousands of years before Columbus? How does mainstream science explain that away?
It sounds like an airtight case until you look at the underlying biology and botany.
Okay, break it down for us.
The scientific counter to this was brilliantly provided by researchers like Duncan Edlin. He demonstrated that you don't need transatlantic voyages to explain this anomaly. The biological reality is that plants belonging to the Solanaceae family, the nightshade family, which includes belladonna and mandrake, were entirely native to ancient Egypt and were heavily used in their medicines.
So they already had these plants?
Yes. And those native Egyptian plants naturally contain tropane alkaloids, including both nicotine and the chemical compounds very closely related to cocaine.
Oh, wow.
So the mummies absorbed these chemicals through local Egyptian plants, not through imported South American narcotics. Furthermore, we have a massive, incredibly detailed body of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic literature, and they never once mention outfitting a fleet to sail across a massive, unknown ocean to a new continent.
That makes total sense. So with all these wild theories circulating aliens, lost continents, mummy curses, transatlantic voyages, and generating massive TV ratings for shows with millions of viewers, how should the actual scientific community respond? Because looking at all this, it presents a huge dilemma for academia.
It is a deeply divisive issue among professionals. On one hand, you have the perspective of prominent archaeologists like Garrett Fagan and Kenneth Feder. Their stance is essentially, you cannot reason with unreason.
Meaning don't even try.
Right. They argue that engaging in public debate with fringe theorists is absolutely pointless because pseudoarchaeologists fundamentally deny logic and the scientific method. Entering into a televised debate just turns into a slanging match. It mathematically elevates the fringe theory, puts it on equal footing with actual science, and legitimizes anti-science in the eyes of the public.
But can academics really afford to just ignore this and hope it goes away? I mean, Kenneth Feder actually conducted a survey of his own college archaeology students. These are young people actively paying money to study the subject at a university level.
Yeah, this stat is wild.
And the results showed a staggering 12% of them actually believe that King Tut's curse killed people upon discovery. That's not the general public, that's archaeology students. If professionals don't engage and push back, doesn't the misinformation just win by default?
This raises an important question, and it's the exact point argued by archaeologist Cornelius Holtorf. He takes a very different view from Fagan. He argues that academics are often entirely too opinionated and patronizing when dealing with the public's curiosity.
That's a fair point.
He advocates for a much more inclusive attitude, pointing out that science evolves. For instance, what we now call archaeoastronomy.
What's that?
It's the rigorous study of how ancient people understood and aligned structures with the sky. That used to be dismissed as a fringe pseudoarchaeology before it was refined, tested, and adopted by mainstream science.
Oh, interesting.
But the catch-22 is undeniable. Television networks and internet platforms heavily fund pseudoarchaeology for short-term financial gain because it's sensational, it's easy to digest, and it keeps eyeballs on the screen. It is highly visible. If scientists engage, they risk giving it unwarranted credibility. If they ignore it, the public is abandoned to an ocean of misinformation.
It's an incredibly tough spot for historians, scientists, and educators. So to recap the journey we've taken you on today, we've explored exactly how pseudoarchaeology operates entirely backward without the scientific method, writing its own rules and stripping away context to fit predetermined conclusions.
Yeah.
We've seen how its proponents play the victim, likening themselves to Galileo fighting a supposedly corrupt academic establishment while secretly craving that very establishment's approval.
The irony is rich.
We've uncovered the truly dark, nationalist, and colonialist underbelly of these theories that actively seek to erase indigenous history. We've busted the enduring myths of Egyptian curses, Mayan spaceships, and cocaine mummies by looking at the actual biological and physical evidence. And we've seen the very real struggle that modern academics face in trying to combat this overwhelming tide of highly profitable, entertaining fiction.
It is a complex, constantly shifting landscape where the human desire for quick mystery often completely overshadows the profound, real, and hard-earned achievements of ancient human beings.
And that leaves us with a final thought I want you to really mull over. There's a fascinating detail in the research regarding the ancient Maya city of Tikal, located in modern-day Guatemala.
Beautiful site.
In the 1990s, pseudoarchaeological claims and television specials arguing that ancient aliens had carved the magnificent stones in Tikal caused a massive boom in international tourism. The public attention was huge. People flocked to the site.
But there's a catch.
Right. But the local Maya people, the actual descendants of the architects who built those structures, rarely received the money from that economic boost. So the next time you sit down on your couch and turn on an entertaining fringe documentary about ancient aliens or lost continents, you have to ask yourself, are you just having harmless fun? Or are you accidentally funding the exploitation and the historical erasure of the very cultures you find so fascinating?
It really makes you realize that how we choose to view the history of the past has very real, very tangible consequences for people living in the present.
It absolutely does. It all comes right back to that crime scene we talked about at the beginning. Are you going to look at the fingerprints, the stratigraphy, the DNA, the real tangible evidence left behind by the brilliant human beings who came before us? Or are you going to point at the lamp in the corner just because it makes for a better story? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning what you read, always look for the evidence, and we'll catch you next time.